Hi, my name is Daniel Clark, and today on 09/06/2025, I'm going to be conducting assignment 4 for FTH 223, so please sit back and enjoy the lesson. As you can see, my workspace is free, clear of any live ammunition, and so is this pistol. As I can put my finger into the chamber and be able to visually check the chamber just like that right there. As you can see, it's free and clear of live ammunition. So for the first part of this assignment is I want to talk about the science behind compensators. This is not my compensator or my pistol. This is a Striker Industries pistol that I found to use the picture to show you what it looks like with a compensator on a pistol. But what are compensators? Here's some science and some pros and cons for compensators. Compensators are muzzle devices. Uh, excuse me. Compensators are muzzle devices engineered to counteract the physical forces that occur when a firearm is discharged. Here's some science within the structure form. What happens when you fire a gun? Recoil. Newton's third law of motion says every action has an equal and opposite reaction. When the bullet is propelled forward, the firearm pushes backwards. Muzzle rise. The escaping gases from the barrel exert upward force, causing the muzzle to flip up. This disrupts the sight alignment and slows up follow-up shots. How a compensator works. Gas redirection. Compensators feature ports or baffles that vent high-pressure gases upward and sometimes sideways as a bullet exits the barrel. Counterforce generation. By redirecting gases upward, they create a downward force that resists muzzle rise. Recoil management. Well, they do not eliminate recoil. Compensators spread the force over time, making it less abrupt and improving shooter control. So here are some benefits to having a compensator on your pistol. Faster follow-up shots. It reduces muzzle rise, means quicker reacquisition of sights. Improves accuracy, especially in rapid-fire or competitive settings. Enhances control, particularly useful for lightweight or high-caliber pistols. Here are some cons. Increases muzzle flash. The redirected gases can create a brighter flash, which may be directing or revealing your position, distracting or revealing your position. Excuse me. Added noises. Compensators can amplify sounds due to vented gases. Extra weight and length may affect the balance or holster compatibility. All right, so next I want to go over some stuff that I polished for this assignment as well. So as you can see, this is the tools and the stuff I used to help push this assignment forward to get done what I needed to. So here's what it looked like. There wasn't a whole lot of stoning I needed to do on this, so there wasn't really any before pictures. I did do a little bit just to remove some binding burning that wouldn't have showed up on camera anyway. But this is the after of what it looked like. And then I wanted to polish the trigger bar and trigger. As you can see, this is what it was with the flits on it. This is what I used. And then, as you can see, it's the cleaned up polished version next to it. Then I wanted to polish up the hammer and the rear housing. So as you can see, I put the flits on it, and then as you can see, it's with the flits removed. Next, I want to polish the sear and the sear housings. So after I polished the sear and the sear housings, this is what it looked like before and after. We're getting the spring replacement here in a minute. So my objective in doing this polishing and stoning was to reduce friction and remove micro burrs or machining marks on the sear, hammer, and trigger engagement surfaces. By doing this, I'm creating a smoother, more consistent trigger pull that feels cleaner and more predictable. I'm not reshaping or altering engagement angles in any way, just refining the surface finish to improve mechanical efficiency. This should help result in a lighter, crisper break without compromising safety or reliability. This process helps reduce grittiness or stacking in the trigger pull and helps you maintaining an excuse me And then make sure that you're maintaining the original geometry to avoid unsafe conditions like premature discharges and failure to reset. We'll get more into that later, how I accomplished this without doing that. So I can't remember if I mentioned this, but for my trigger polishing before polish with the hammer not cocked, I was reading about 11 and a half to 11 pounds. With the camera, with it half cocked, I was reading the same, about 11 and a half to 11 pounds. And with the hammer fully pulled backwards, 9 to 8.5 pounds. This was before polishing. After polishing is what I was reading was 10 to 11 pounds with the hammer not cocked. Uh, After polishing, I was reading 10 to 11 pounds with the hammer halfway cocked. And then with it fully back, I was reading about 9 to 8.5 pounds. As you can see, not much changed, but there was a slight differences. Before I did the polishing, the trigger felt smooth but heavy and a bit gritty and a bit long. After the polishing, it was less gritty, still a bit heavy and still a bit long, but that would come later on when I make the spring changes. And I talk about that here in a second. Okay, so after my spring replacement, I was reading about 9.5 to a 10-pound trigger pull with the hammer not cocked at all. With it mid-cocked, I was reading the same, about 9.5 to 10 pounds. With the hammer fully cocked back, I was reading a whopping 6 to 6.5 pound trigger pull with the hammer fully cocked. Now, in saying this, here are the springs that I replaced. I replaced the firing pin spring. The one at the bottom is the old one, and the one at the top is the newer one. I also replaced the retainer spring. I also replaced the hammer spring. The old one is still on the inside, the new one's on the outside, and that's where I replaced. And then I also replaced the trigger rebound spring, which is there on the far left. Um, those are the springs I placed, and like I said before, my readings were aftermarket springs, 9.5 to 10-pound trigger with it fully hammer fully forward, the hammer halfway cocked. I was reading to 9.5 to 10 pounds, and the hammer fully back in the cock position, 6 to 6.5. And one more thing about the trigger springs after replacement, I noticed it was less heavy on the trigger, and the trigger pull was a lot shorter. Okay, so one more thing I'd like to cover is how I accomplish these tasks without altering the geometry of the surfaces to an unsafe level. So in order to do this, I use controlled pressure, um, even strokes with minimal pressure to avoid removing excess material. Tool selection, I made sure I used the specific tool, i.e. I used destoning, so I used the round one when I needed to, the square one when I needed to, and stuff like that. By the way, these were sent to me by SDI. Then the flatness, I want to make sure I maintained flat. I kept the stone flat against the surface I was working on to not rock or edge pressure to preserve the geometry. In other words, I didn't want to like do crazy patterns on the gun to alter the geometry in any way. For polishing techniques, I use my Dremel with a polishing round. I use this Filtz, which is good. It uses for metal, plastic, and fiberglass. So I use that to polish up some of the surfaces as well. I want to make sure I had no rounding. I polished only the contact surfaces, not edges or corners, to avoid rounding that could affect engagement. I also visually did some visual checks. I inspected the surfaces after I got done under a light and tested the smoothness with my finger and fingernails to ensure that there was no extra burrs or bumping that I could feel on those surfaces. Alright, I know I did this at the beginning of the video, but I'm going to do it again as I got to bring the gun onto camera because I need to perform a drop safety test as outlined in my lecture material. So as you can see, this weapon is free clear of any live ammunition, and I can get my finger up into the port right there. As you can see, it's free clear of any live ammunition, and so is my workspace currently around me. So in order to do this drop safety test, is what I want to do is cock the hammer fully and I want to put a little pressure on the back of the hammer right here, and I want to make sure that it's not going off when I'm just pushing on the hammer, and that the sear is and the hammer are engaging the way they're supposed to be, and it's not just going to set off when I'm putting this pressure on the back of the hammer. So next to the drop safety test is what I want to do is I want to put my thumb on the hammer right here, pull the trigger, and then release the trigger. And what should happen here is that this hammer should stop at the second notch in the half cock position. And this is the kind of resemble, maybe it got bounced off the sear and the sear surface. So you want to make sure that sear and that hammer's stopping where it needs to be, in this case, the half cock position. But this was the drop safety test as outlined in the lecture material. Lastly, assess my skills at performing the task like this was a customer. Would you feel confident in performing this work if tasked to do so now, or would you need more time to practice before feeling prepared for this type of work? Would you shy away from performing this work in the future? If so, why? I would not shy away from performing this type of work in the future. Only one, because practice makes perfect. Do I feel comfortable performing a task in these tasks on this type of weapon? Yes, I do. As the lecture material really pointed out and did really good at showing us what we needed to do, how we needed to do it, without overextending the knowledge to a point we didn't understand. So I do appreciate that. So I do feel really comfortable in performing these tasks if I needed to, and I would not shy away from this type of work. This has been my video. Appreciate you watching. Peace out. Catch you on the next one.